mi reciente experiencia en Colombia perdón, gerente de perforación corporativo para Frontera. Actualmente base Houston. Un placer de acompañarnos. Back to you, Grant.
Thank you, Juan. And we have Keith Coghill and Carlos Romero in as well. Keith has experience in Colombia as drilling manager, and Carlos has extensive experience as well. So what we'll do, I'll just share my screen, and I'm just going to start the webinar. If you can confirm that you can see this okay?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Wallace.
Right, you can see that okay? Thank you.
Yes.
Right, so we've done our quick introductions. I would just ask that if you can type in the webinar what your challenges are. We won't name the company or the people, but just what challenges you're facing at the moment, whether it's people or technical. If you can type a few things in here, we'll try and touch on a few of the subjects because it's your webinar.
So, Grant, to help expedite the exercise, so from your standpoint, what are the common challenges that you see from the worldwide operations, so we can help our audience to think about those that affect their operations?
Absolutely. Feel free to type some things in. And like I say, we won't name who you are or your organization. We're just trying to get some themes that people are seeing as challenges in the industry at the moment and in their operations.
You need an example, Juan?
Yeah, so that will help people to think about it.
I guess, folks, one of the things that we see, and it's common in all international regions, is that with the ramp up in operations, the number of people that have been brought into the industry, there's quite a lack of competence. Competence is low. And what we're seeing is that leaders, frontline leadership, are having to do jobs of subordinate members of their teams. Therefore, the leadership is suffering. You know, they're less good at leading because they're more doing. They're doing more hands-on jobs than leading. That's a very common issue we're seeing across different locations and for different clients and different business lines.
I mean, I think the other challenge.
Para los que nos están escuchando, atendiendo el webinar, siéntanse libre de colocar sus preguntas y yo estaré tomando nota para compartirlas con Bruce y con Bruce. Si tienen retos en logística, factor humano, entrenamiento, logística, temas de mercado actual, please type those in English or Spanish and we can expedite the process.
And just while people are typing, the other challenge that we are seeing in the industry that we're getting involved in is there's also increasing cultural challenges in terms of safety, and we're seeing negative safety trends that clients are bringing us in to help. And the recurrence, as Bruce talked about, competence is a challenge. So we're seeing mistakes recurring, happening again and again. So that's some of the things that we're seeing internationally. If no one's willing to type, we'll move on and we can maybe visit that. Is there any comments there, Juan?
So we have the first question, and the question is, how do you guarantee the training of our personnel?
How do we guarantee the training of the personnel?
Yes.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And what we'll do is let's come to that one at the end. The key thing is it's about understanding your needs and the needs of the personnel. And Bruce is going to touch on that and show you a few of our tools to understand where the gaps are in people and how to make it effective. So we're going to show that. That's a great question. Thank you. So we'll move into the webinar. As we've talked about, we're here about achieving success in complex wells and really looking at a range of HPHT, MPD, extended reach, and just how do we integrate the human and the technical. And one of the ways that we do that, obviously, is simulators, and we're going to come to that. And this is just one of our simulators. But first, what we want to do is we want to just give you an outline very quickly of what we do, from advanced human factors, dealing with people, giving them non-technical skills, supporting teams in managed pressure drilling. We get involved in managed pressure drilling projects from engineering through to coaching services, performance improvement, helping behaviors in the engineering team, but also at the well site. And then we get involved in complex HPHT wells. And as we touched on, safety coaching, ERD, rig intake, and just generally consultancy where there's problems, there's challenges. So that's us. Here's some of our clients, projects that we're just currently doing, and recent projects include with the likes of Shell, a very complex ERD project, to an HPHT project with Total. We're heading into an MPD project, another MPD project next week. We have a number of safety projects ongoing. So we're working not just with operators, but even in Asia with service companies such as Expro. So we're helping operators, drilling contractors, and service companies with their challenges. So the challenge before us in the webinar was, how do you achieve technical and human performance success on complex wells? So this is a case study that we're going to visit in a little bit more detail. But before Salos were involved, the offset well was 420 days. The first well that we helped the client was 187. And recently they've got to 76. Now, we've played a part in that coaching and training, and we're going to talk about that, how the operator saved money, and then the drilling contractor has been awarded a big contract. And we played a key part in helping them deliver these results, because it's their success. And Bruce is going to share a bit more on that. So drilling, it's a technical business. As technical experts, as engineers, you're engineers, you know we place great importance on the technical challenges, designing the technical solution, adopting advanced technologies. We're always looking for the advanced technologies, and ensuring technical competencies. And that's the question that was asked: how do we ensure, the training has the result? Competence, as we know, training, experience, education, attitude, and skills, technical skills, but also non-technical skills coming together. So it's technical, and it's technical risk. So if we look at managed pressure cementing, for example, there's a lot of technical elements into managed pressure cementing. We need to do the hydraulic modeling. We need to have a good cementing recipe. We've got to calibrate key equipment. We've got to understand temperature effects, overbalance uncertainty. There's a lot of technical elements. I'm just touching on a few of them. So it's all about technical training. And that's how we think. We think, okay, historically, 99% of our training is technical because of these things that we've just touched on. So the reality is that the remaining balance is 1%. 1% training is non-technical. And that's generally when we talk to teams around the world, they have a huge focus on the technical and a very small emphasis on the non-technical. And I spoke at IDC event, SP event, and I asked 200 leaders, and I said, how many people have done technical training, everybody puts their hand up. Okay, who's been on a decision-making course? And not one of the 200 delegates had. So this is the challenge that we've got. If 80% of the incidents that we see, and the incidents, unplanned incidents, are to do with people, is it really technical? Is it really all technical, the skills that we need as to perform at the highest level? And these statistics are from the UK, but actually they're the same all over the world. So when we think of most incidents, 80%, the majority of incidents come down to the failures, the acts, the omissions of people. The other 20% are technical, tool failure, material failure. They're actually a technical failure, but most of these incidents are actually technical, mostly people. The small side of that is the technical. So we're good at the technical. We're good at focusing on this area here. If we look at what, obviously on a rig task, we're looking at equipment, we're looking at lifting, we're looking at well control, we're looking at pressure and temperature. But actually, these are the things below the iceberg that trip us up. So whether it's poor supervision, and a lot of incidents come down to supervisors, as Bruce mentioned, supervisors are doing the job because the competence is low, so they are not supervising to the level they should. We have gaps in procedure, we have competence gaps. And often when we have incidents, we talk about loss of situational awareness, poor communication, things relating to workload management, and we'll come to that one in particular. Poor decision-making, poor leadership. And IOGP recently looked at well control events, and we're very good at looking at well control events. And these are common, that we basically have well control events, and then we can share the details, and they analyze the details of 172 well control events. And what was interesting is they saw that 71% related to human factors. So that's about human failure. But actually, when you dig into this, well, barriers are to do with people, whether people maintain the barriers or fail to maintain the barriers. Risk assessments, they're written by people, followed or not followed. Same with procedures. Procedures are written, followed or not followed by people. Well, competence, that's about people. Resources is largely about people. Systems, well, sorry, go to the last one. Supervision, well, supervision is people again. And we can say, well, systems isn't about people. Well, actually, systems are designed, implemented, maintained by people. So we actually see that people are threaded throughout incidents. And that's why we're going to focus, and we do focus as an organization, of always bringing that training together. So if we look, for example, at MPD, front-end engineering, look at decision-making. I touched on that earlier. We make 35,000 decisions a day. And the reality is, and that's a Harvard statistic, the better the quality of the questions, the better the quality of our operations. So the better decisions that we make. And we know that if we can help teams in the front end make better decisions, even if we execute poorly, and this is, as you know from Shell, they realize that even if we plan very strongly but execute poorly, we actually achieve better success than if we plan poorly and execute well. So we need to help teams at this front end create psychological safety. Now, what does that mean? That means willing to ask and challenge each other, willing to risk asking the stupid question, And Google found this out, that basically Project Aristotle, the higher performing teams actually perform better where there was psychological safety, where people could ask questions. We need common decision-making tools. That's something that we rarely see in organizations, where basically we have a common decision-making tool where the frontline leaders, the boardroom, and the actual operations team have a similar way of making decisions. And then we need to understand common decision-making pitfalls. So biases, fallacies, heuristics, areas that cause us to make poor decisions. So if we look at the aviation world, and they're 20 years ahead of the drilling world in this area, this was the incident that changed their mind about the need to focus more on those things that we've touched on. So this was an incident that happened in the UK in January 1989. It's called Kegworth, is the incident. 47 fatalities. It was pilot error. And we say, why? Now, some of you may be familiar with it, some of you may not. But why is that aircraft on the ground when it's not a technical fault? Because the plane could fly. It had an engine fire. One engine of its 2 engines went on fire. I don't know whether, if you want to type what you think happened, go ahead and type. I'll wait for a second. But basically the pilot made an error. And actually, so did the co-pilot. Because like drilling, aviation is a team game. There's more than one person involved. So what happened was the engine went on fire shortly after takeoff. And in their panic to come round and land the plane, he shut the wrong engine down. And this is where he actually crashed the plane just short of the runway. And when they listened to the incident and recovered the black box, they were able to hear every conversation and what went through. This was a highly experienced pilot. This was a strong co-pilot. But what the tape showed was panic between the pilot and the co-pilot, degraded situational awareness, so they started to make poor decisions, and situational awareness is the foundation of good decisions. So just like in drilling, you know, if we understand more about the geology, we can make better decisions about where we drill. In the aviation world, poor understanding of what was happening, as in they picked the wrong engine to shut down, they thought it was the other engine, caused them to shut the wrong engine. And they made the poor decision. Poor leadership, because basically they didn't actually challenge each other, and they didn't work out as a team, poor teamwork. Other members of the team could see what was going on. They knew that the pilot said that he'd shut down the right-hand engine, but it was the left-hand engine that was on fire. So there's poor communication, poor workload management, how they shared the workload between them, who was doing what. And then actually, what is interesting about this incident is at the back of the plane was the stewardess, and they interviewed her. And they said, why did you not challenge the pilot? And she said, well, actually, when he came on board, he shouted at me because I had the wrong hairband on. And what did that do? That told her that she's not to challenge him. And when he said he'd shut the right-hand engine down and it was the left-hand engine, she felt she couldn't say anything. So technical proficiency, they realized, was no longer enough. So
Right, there's a
we're good.
question.
Yeah, go.
There is a question related to this. So someone says, could this accident could have been avoided?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they could have flown for, you know, more than 5 minutes with this engine on fire. That's a great question. But because they didn't share the workload and they didn't use all the resources as a team to say, well, can you go back and look and double check which engine it is? And we're going to show that. Bruce is going to show that. Well, I'll actually show it shortly, how you actually do it. So it absolutely was avoidable. And there was a string of incidents worldwide that were very similar, where pilots made poor decisions, but the aircraft could have flown on. So that's a great question. So technical skills, the team were technically strong, but they didn't have the training in these areas. They didn't know how to bring all it together. They didn't know how to make the decision on which engine to shut down. They didn't know how to communicate well. They had poor situational awareness. They didn't manage the workload. They were too busy trying to get back to actually the airport rather than manage the incident before them. So once the aviation world introduced what we call crew resource management, the safety levels increased significantly. These improvements are technical improvements as planes improved technically their safety. But this last bit was driven down, and in 2017, there were 3.9 billion flights around the world. Sorry, passengers flown around, and not one fatality. And that's why we take the learning from here. So there's two premises. One, we're all liable to error. And the second thing is we're surrounded by threats each day. Just the same in our world, we're liable to make the wrong calculations, the wrong pipe tally, the wrong, pick up the wrong procedure, whatever it might be. And we have threats coming at us every day, whether it's well control, stuck pipe, whatever those things are. Our world is actually quite similar. This is on this right-hand side is an MPD operator and 2 drillers. They have the same world as us. So if we say, what are the similarities? Well, actually, it's complex. They have complexity, we have complexity. It's constantly changing. We've got downhole changes, they've got, we've got downhole changes, they've got weather changes. Long periods of relative calm followed by sudden changes. So for example, they're flying transatlantic and then suddenly there's a failure, a hydraulic failure. We're drilling and then suddenly we have a drilling break and we have a well control, a kick. They have threats, we have threats. So our worlds are quite similar. In fact, most operational environments have these same challenges, and we're making decisions under time pressure. We have a time pressure to make decisions. So what does good look like? So what we're going to do is we're going to show you a video, and this, you're going to see the engines roll up. This is a simulator, and this is a pilot taking off, and two pilots taking off, and you're going to hear a bang. And basically that is the engine failure at takeoff. This is similar to Kegworth. This is at the worst time. So I just ask you to watch it. And if you can give me some of the words that describe what you see, if you can type them in, what you think you see and observe, that would be great. And I'll explain a little bit the video as we go as well.
Seabed 950, surface wind 240 at 10, you're clear for takeoff 27 left.
Clear takeoff 27 left, speedbird 950.
Setting power. Flex SRS runway.
Power set.
This is ground speed here. The engine's rolling up.
$100 knots.
Checked.
Rotate. Engine failure. Engine fire. Positive climb.
Gear up.
Gear up.
CNAV. Autopilot engaged.
AP1. Master caution further down the list.
Restate the emergency, please.
Okay, it says engine 1 fire, and it looks like there's been some engine damage or engine failure on number 1 engine.
Okay, my legs agree with that, so that's confirmed. ECAM action, IRT.
ECAM action, engine 1 fire. Thrust lever number 1 idle. Thrust lever number 1.
Confirmed.
Engine master number 1 off. Engine master number 1
Confirmed.
off. Engine 1 fire, push button, push. Engine 1 fire, push button,
Confirmed.
push. Thrust lever 1 idle. Agent 1 after 8 seconds.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. Sweep at 950. We have indications of an engine fire. Carrying out drills. Stand by. Seabed 950, your mayday is acknowledged. Standing by.
So I fired agent number 1. It says, AT notify you've done. If fire after 23 seconds, counting down, agent 2.
So that was the incident. Any words, if any, you want to type? How did that feel? What are the things that it felt, and what did they do? Now that was exactly the same as Kegworth, an engine fire on takeoff. Maybe you want to type something in terms of what you think it was. But what we find, I'm just aware of time. People say it was calm. People say they followed procedure, and you noticed he actually took a long time to react. He didn't jump. He put on his autopilot, and Kegworth, he took off his autopilot. So by putting on the autopilot, he was able to delegate that task of flying to the aircraft in effect. So he reduced his workload. The last thing he did was actually communicate with the ground, whereas in Kegworth, they were communicating very early on. And before every action, you noticed he was confirming with his colleague before he pressed the engine to extinguish it. So it's a completely different feeling. So I'm going to hand over now to Bruce, and he's going to just share how we apply those principles and integrate it with the technical.
Thanks, Grant. So this is the model that we use for all our projects. And it depends on the complexity of the project and at what stage we're arriving at the project. So at the understand portion that you see there, that's generally front-end activities, working with subsurface people, petrophysicists, the geologists, and so on. So we're looking at, how's the organization set up? What's the value drivers for the project? How do we create value, and so on? And like in the execution phase, we've got different tools and processes. How are they gathering knowledge? The knowledge stream is how do we share lessons? How's a lessons repository work? How do you manage it? Operational horizon is looking forward. How do you plan your activities? How do you manage hazards, and so on? And the sustain piece. So we might join a mature project, and we don't need those early stage gates. So let's focus on a legacy piece here of coaching your people. How do we mentor? How do we leave behind that you can focus on lean operations, increase your competence, So in essence, we have a model that we can step in with a client and we can together create a roadmap for the project and essentially hand it over, that we can give you these tools as well and these skills that you can embed them within your organization. And part of this as well would be what we call champions. You create your own champions. So you designate specific people who you think would have the influence and the skill set to do that and become stakeholders. And we would coach them how to take over the role that we would have been giving you as a consultancy. Next one, Grant, please. So yeah, this is the same picture here. So as Grant had shown earlier. So what we're saying is that we can step into, depending on what the project is, and help, right up at the identify stage or right up at the execute and operate. There's not really much more to add to that, Grant. We've seen that. So I wrote that question down. Someone had asked about how do you guarantee an improvement. So this is one tool that we use. It's a non-technical process. And what we do is we're currently operating this for a well management company on behalf of the operator. And what we do is we go out and the coach will canvass everyone on that rig, the business partners, the operator, the drilling contractor, everyone. And we've got a set of questions that are based on what we call human factors, performance influencing factor. So what we're looking for here is we want to understand what is the culture on that rig and what is the behavior, not from a technical aspect, on the non-technical delivery of the projects. We get the feedback from the crews, and you see that in those gray bars. And what we do is our coaches start to observe. We call it observing. It's auditing. We don't like to call it auditing because people think, oh, I'm under a spotlight here. We try and make this as casual as possible. We ask for permission. May I join your maintenance meeting? May I join your toolbox talk? We'll observe tasks and with the subsea engineer, with the drilling supervisor, with the guys on the deck and the crane operator, any kind of operation. And what happens is you begin to build a picture, and we call it an infraction. So if there was a toolbox talk, so perhaps the toolbox talk was good, they looked at the risk assessment, the hazard assessment, the drilling program, but then if there was no questioning at the end, if that supervisor or leader is completely in tell mode, and then they didn't talk about perhaps feedback or get some ideas from the crews, the coach would mark down that in that case, communication, leadership and responsiveness, let's say, would be an infraction. So we start to build this picture, and this is very, very typical. What happens is that it's actually, this one is quite untypical, that they thought their operational discipline was quite low. But generally, all teams think they're good at risk identification and communication. And then what we bring is we bring evidence that, guess what, guys, you're not as good as you think. And here's the evidence to prove that. Now, what we do as well during this is that we're capturing a lesson. We're perhaps getting an idea from the people. These are done on one-on-ones. They're done in team, big teams, small teams. So we're also getting ideas as well of how we can, how we can fix the gap here. So this is just a picture, but what this picture does is it lets us see where to focus. So where would the coach focus non-technical skills on? So if you look on the right-hand side there, the pale purple bar with the lime green, you can see that by the end of the project, the number of infractions had reduced, considerably. So almost all infractions on communication, 45% of observations had a communication issue. But then by the time that we'd left that project, 9 months later, only 5%. So guess what? What you focus on is what you improve on. And this observation is done on a rolling basis. and it's a league table. It's not that one is much, much better or much worse than another. It's just that as the team becomes better at communication, the coaches will then focus on another theme. Next one, Grant, please. So we've got a similar system that we use, and what we do is we essentially are testing the guys, you know, for just to find out what their competence is. We're looking at what's the dynamics, what's the skills, what are the non-tech skills of a team. So we're looking at experience. We're looking at what have they done, what's your exposure. So, you know, you may have a drilling supervisor who's been a drilling supervisor for 12 years, but he's never seen coring. So his competence is at 0 for that. So you need to be able to design your teams and that you've got competence spread throughout all 4 or 5 teams. If it's on a rig site, you know, if it's an office-based environment, you need to make sure that you're spreading that competence around the teams. Thanks, Grant. So here's an example of what we did for Borr. So we're working for the drilling contractor, and they had taken on two heavy-duty, very, very big, powerful land rigs, the most complex land wells to be drilled in Mexico, and they had lots of new people coming on board to join this project. So what we did was we did a lot of technical training, HPHT training, MPD training, but then we actually brought in a simulator for non-technical training. So if you consider what we're doing is we're taking, so the skill set that the aviation world builds, we're taking that same ethos, and we've got up 6 modules, and we'll explain that later of what they are, that we can roll out with the crews. If you think of a program, the drilling program is like a set of aspirations and goals. Drill from to, pump this mud, have X overbalance. You've got standards.
Excuse me, Bruce, there's a question.
Yeah.
That says, how do you use the artificial intelligence in processes? I don't know if this person is referring to the simulator and the exercise that you are referring to, if there's any artificial intelligence involved in this process.
There isn't, no. This is all, so we create the logic for this. So I'll explain how we do that when we look at the shell job. Will be after this. But what I'm trying to point here, Juan, is that if you look at drilling programs, a set of aspirations, and like the daily instructions, the driller's instructions, we would call it. So the operational steps is actually the technical piece of how you turn the switch, which switch to turn, and you know it's steps in sequence. But what's missing is that middle piece of, you know, if you think of a losses diagram, quite often it's an easy one to pick on. If you think of a diagram, very often we don't have the trigger points. You know, what is the rationale of me stopping? Who do I contact? What sort of language? And when I say language, if you think about the BOP in the well, we shut the well, we close the well, we activate the stack, we shut the stack, we close the rams. There are so many different types of terminology for just one action. And that's what happened in that aviation incident. Was they didn't have the same language that they could understand when they're talking to the ground control tower, different words. So that's what we're trying to get the guys to think. So they're using the same words, they think the same words, they have that expectation of when I say something that they will understand. But what you do is you check in to find out, what did I just say? So if I say something to Grant, I want you to change mud pump 1 to 50 strokes. What did I just tell you? So the emphasis is on me. It's not on Grant. I'm the sender of the message. It's on him, not me. So that's what we're trying to instill into the guys here. You know, if you look at that picture on the top left-hand side there at 10 o'clock, you know, on a rig site, at the cement unit and a coil tubing unit, it's very common for someone to give a command. The person turns around, they do something, and they turn back around again. And everyone thinks, yeah, it's Bruce. He's been on this rig 10 years. He knows what he's doing. But you'd no idea what I did. You've no idea, Juan, what I said. Grant doesn't know what I interpreted, and he doesn't even know what I did. And that's what we're saying, is that when it comes to a critical part of the well, you know, like bumping a plug or something, you don't need to do it all the time, but for critical activities, like flying the plane, like pushing that, the gentleman, he asked him to put his finger on the fire extinguisher. He doesn't push it, he puts it there, just in case his finger's on the wrong one. And that's what we're trying to say to the guys is, you know, you do the same in that situation. Tell me what I just said. What do you think it means? Yes, go ahead. Does that make sense? Okay. So what we'll do as well is when we've been in that simulator, each simulation will have an after action review. There'll be a short review. And it's generally, so what we're going to do as well is we'll load the guys up. You know, to start with, it's very easy. It's a fairly easy, straightforward connections, tripping pipe. And then as we get into more complex things where, you know, for example, we did last week with Shell, we've shut the well in and they've got such a small margin that if they pump too fast, we're losing. So they want to get the influx out, but they're losing. So we will overload the guys up. We don't set them up to fail, but we really want to stress them out, you know, in that sterile environment. So then we'll have the review and we'll say, right, we don't need to ask many questions. It's, okay, guys, how did that feel? Yeah, not so great, Bruce. We got gas in the riser. Okay, that's the what. Go on, what else? Oh, well, we didn't do this and that was too slow to react and we did that and that. Okay, that's the how. That's good. Now let's talk about the why, because the why is the human factors piece. So the lessons, so when I get my pen and I write that down, the what piece is only 1 or 2 lines. The how piece is 3 or 4 lines, but the why is this long. There's much, much more in the non-technical piece of, I didn't escalate, someone said something, I didn't ask a question back. He said that, I didn't quite understand what he meant. I thought, why did that happen? Someone might say, I thought that would happen, but they didn't. And that's what Grant's talking about, that psychological safety is, speak up. You know, speaking up's the silly thing to do is not speak up. So the question's not silly. Getting that clarity is what we're looking for. We'll click again, Grant, please. So yeah, so those lessons that we capture after each of those reviews, when we go to the rig site, now we are in that reservoir section with that narrow margin. That coach there, you'll see on the left-hand side, George, he will go and he will canvass the crew. He'll get together with the assistant driller, with the directional driller and the mud man. Remember the lessons that we captured on, what was that again? That's okay, I'm the coach, that's my job. Remember we did this, we did that? Oh yeah. So what are we going to do? Next week when we're in the reservoir, what are we going to do? Oh yeah, it's this and this and this. So it's revisiting those visits and that creating that subliminal, is that a word you maybe need to translate? Juan, you know, that mental thing that you just automatically think, here's the hazard and here's how I act. So that's how we take from the simulator to the well site, those learnings. Could you click one more, Grant, please? So this is just showing the what that improvement brings, and that the guys will just get better and better, and it's just purely based on practice. People are gonna learn the skills. They're gonna build their craft on being better leaders, better questioning. Grant said that one. Think of that. The better your question, the better the quality of the answer. So the better the question, the better the quality of the answer.
Bruce, there's a question that says that if these trainings are carried out only for project workers or are also for investors. And it's a note saying to avoid situations like what happened in the Deepwater Horizon incident we had a few years back.
Is it for which people? Is it only for the rig people? Is that the question?
Yeah, let me read again. Are these training carried out only for project workers or also for investors? So the way that I interpret this question is that in my mind, when we have board meetings at the company level, they want to understand the why, the what, and the how that you were mentioning in the previous slide. And from there understand lessons learned for them to fix the systematic piece or the human piece or the equipment piece. So what are your thoughts about that question?
The simulator is essentially used when a program is made. So that will be fairly well into a project. You'll almost be at the execute stage. The human factors process can be used at the very first stage gate, at financial decisions, at early planning stage gates. Human factors can be used. So the answer is it can be used. The simulator is generally used with front-end teams, subsurface to test programs, and with operational teams before execution. The human factors is done at any stage with anyone connected to a project. So the finance team, the procurement team, and the well engineering team.
It really is from the boardroom all the way down.
Yeah.
Because if we have people understanding the value of human factors all the way down and using the tools from, like you say, even the investors, the stakeholders, the geologists, the drilling team, the completions team, if we take it all the way through, it has a bigger impact. So that's a great question.
Yeah. Just go quickly to the next one, Grant. I'm just aware of time here. Click again, please.
So yeah.
Next one. So essentially, you can click on it. We went to the field to, they'd had at least one stuck pipe or well control incident. And when we applied this, so the hazards, the real hazards that they had, we plugged into so we can type into we can set up the simulations, formations, porosity, all sorts of data we can put into Mirror. It's pretty close to being a digital twin of the well. As I say, it's logic based, so we can't, if there are fluid or temperature changes, we can't mimic that. Grant, go in there again, please. So what we're measuring the guys is on that left-hand side there is things like procedural knowledge, especially things like first actions. But from a non-technical aspect on the other side is that's the 6 human factors competencies. Communication, workload management, and so on. So every simulation the guys will be scored on that. And what we did there was that they finally got a really good result there, and they're best in class and best in class cost and time on all their projects, just based on that well, because they use the simulator and because the coaches were on site, and relentlessly push the guys to go back in lessons and test them verbally, we call it a verbal drill. You know, what's the hazard? How are you going to deal with it? Who are you going to talk to? Who are you going to inform first? What are your first actions? Go to the next one, Grant, please. So we just finished, this was a job with Shell. So they had a complex, very, very brownfield ERD wells from a floater. So what we did was we took the simulator into their office. And what was interesting about this is that they have a procedure that they can set. It's called hydrostatic parker. So it's not a physical parker. It's a process where you let the well fluid fall away, and then so you're shut in. The well falls away, the fluid level, and then you top it up with light fluid, and then you pump a chemical essentially to seal off the fractures. But the program wasn't fully refined, and what we did was we used the simulator with the drilling program in conjunction with the crews, and we actually managed. So of course we can use the same equipment as well that the rig has. So we can go through the program first couple of steps and stop. Right, what does everyone understand in this? Are we doing this correctly? Have we lined things up properly? So one thing that came out from this was, you know, should we go down the kill or should we go down the choke? Should we fill up from a trip tap? You know, so there are various, I'm getting into detail. So there's various things that we could test the program on and change it there. At the same time, training the guys and giving them that practice to deal with that issue. And what was interesting was that during that period, that one of the well engineers, the completion team said, "Can you model? We've got a cement plug, a legacy well that we need to drill that cement plug out, and there may be up to 3,000 psi gas below it." And so we managed to model that for them. So we now had managed to get the completion team. We can model guns, we can model wireline things as well. So this was essentially done in our own office with the front end people testing the program. Then we took it to the Shell office, the simulator, working with the crews, then working with the drilling contractor, and then we sent it to the rig site with coaches to then again just feed in, giving that subliminal thing. Yeah, that's the guys on that rig there. That's Tony and that George. You know, what was interesting about that one is if you see the big screen in the bottom left-hand side, the whole essence of that hydrostatic parker is it's not very complex, but it's just counterintuitive to what you would do at well control. At well control school, you're taught you shut the well in and you fill it up. This is completely different. So when it's only a picture, but that picture there gets the guys thinking of, well, hold on, what is that? That conduit, that happens, and that happens. And George, he will test the guys. Well, what do you think is happening down the kill line here? Oh, well, it's falling. Okay, so what's happening to the choke line? Is it falling? Well, oh, hold on. So just getting the guys think, so what are you going to do then? What's your conversation going to look like? You as a leader, what are you going to do? Oh, I'm going to do that. No, you're not. You're going to step back. Oh, but no, hold on. That's what that guy there in the black cap, that's his job. Your job is to stand back and be the leader. He can't see. His world is only this size. You know, you see that pilot there. His world is that size. You as the leader, when you're back here, you can look, you can listen. We teach the leaders that they should be the ones doing the least talking. They ask the questions and let the guys talk. And that's what's happening here. So then when these guys, they go to that stage of the program with that severe losses that they know is coming, that they can deal with it very, very quickly and flawlessly. Go again, Grant, please. So this is back to the Mexico project on the jackups, HPHT wells, 400 days for a well, and then they eventually are drilling these in less than 80 days. So what we're trying to show here is that, yes, you need that HPHT coaching, you need the MPD training, you know, you need to look at the program and and have your drill well on paper session as well as on simulator. But you need coaches that can thread in leadership development, team building exercises, one-on-one. So the coach will be questioning a leader on what's the one skill that you are lacking in. Just think of this as, how many people do you know that use the same style all the time? So if you're very strong in one skill set and you use that all the time, then that actually is a weakness. You need to be able to understand the things that you're not so good at. I'm good at questioning, but I'm not good at taking feedback. So our coach will say, right, we'll help you with that. We'll help you be able to give and to be able to take feedback. We'll coach you on listening skills. When some people hear, you will teach me how to listen. Yes, we will. It's a very difficult skill. And guess what? You need to practice it as well. So that's what you can see the list at the top. The technical list is only 4, but the one at the bottom is much, much more. So there's a big emphasis put on the non-technical piece as well.
Bruce, there is a question about the training. So how do you ensure that they were well trained through an exam or other type of verification process?
We actually don't have a scorecard. So we create a scorecard for each. So we only put teams under under the microscope, so to speak. We don't put individuals. So we make teams, and you try and stay in that team. And so for that shell project, they had 11 sets of exercises. And we're so essentially testing that team, and a scorecard is gained, and we can see the and generally what you'll see as well is that, they're going to start low because we're quite critical of how they react and how the conversations go. And as they get better, you get to see this increase in the score. And then what we do is, as the complexity goes up, the score comes back. And now it's, right, we're not as good as we thought. Well, what did I do wrong there? Right, okay, let's talk about it. You're jumping to action too quickly. Guess what? What do we pay drill crews and drilling supervisors for? To do things, to push buttons and pull handles. And we're now coaching them, hold on. We call it the pilots sit on their hands. Don't jump to action. Don't push the button. Don't jump to action. We're coaching them how to sit back again. So then the scores will increase again. So you will always see this dip, and it may actually dip again. We call it double dip. And then it's just increasing that confidence. So we do have a scorecard for all the teams. And then as operations actually happen, again, the coach will be looking at each team, gathering lessons and giving feedback. So everything comes with feedback as well. One thing that, in our industry, we're not very good at giving feedback. Yeah, we test people, we give scores, but we don't give the feedback on, this was good, here's a room for improvement, do that again. So we always miss these opportunities to share when we don't do that. Does that answer that?
We also, we also assessed. Sorry, go on, Bruce.
I was going to say, Grant, do we have a handout that we're going to give at the end afterwards?
Not at the moment, but we could maybe share a scorecard with the.
I was thinking, if there's one or two things, we could share a scorecard.
Yeah, and as Bruce said, we're assessing the team and scoring them as a team, but we also, in this project, we also assessed their HPHT MPD knowledge. And what we saw is a 33% increase, was about the average, to up to 50 to 60% increase in their knowledge from the start of the project, prior to getting the coaching and training, to actually once they've been assessed once they'd had the training. So we do track it, and we can, dependent on client need, give you more detailed metrics. But really, the result of understanding the training is demonstrated in the delivery of the wells. And I guess that comes to that point of, by bringing the technical training and the human factors training together, the aviation world and our world, bringing that as a balance of around 50% in each area, we can significantly change the performance. And we're just integrating it always into the technical training. So when we talk about stuck pipe prevention, we're not just looking at the traditional things, you know, the traditional things that we would analyze. We're actually looking at situational awareness to make sure that we are monitoring the trends, and we can see the increases or decreases that give us the indication that we're about to get stuck. So we bring it all together. And ultimately, as we said earlier, it is from the boardroom. So we want the boardroom to the frontline team having the same tools, being bought into the process, upskilled. So we're going to teach them the technical, non-technical. Now, obviously, the leaders, it's a greater focus on the non-technical because they're not so much at the front end. But we're creating a culture where we can challenge each other and support and coach each other, and then rig and well specific training to the front end teams. And because the training and the coaching are specific to the well, and we're creating just generally a coaching culture up in the leadership teams, we understand that those questions accelerate the competence. And creating that coaching and mentoring culture accelerates performance. And then by integrating human factors into every aspect of what we do with our clients, we can have these significant changes in performance. And the well that Bruce taught you on, showed you on Suriname, 90% of the crew were new to the rig. So it was a big challenge. But yet it was best in class for cost and schedule. So, you know, I'm just aware of time. I think that's us. We're only 4 minutes over. It's really, if there's any questions, I'll just stop sharing in a second. But if you've got any questions, you can email us, and we can try and answer some more now if you want. But we're willing to meet on Teams and just have discussions with you based on your need. So please reach out to Bruce, myself, or Juan. Any more questions?
So because of the time, there's one in the screen. I don't know if you can see it. And maybe this deserves further explanation through an email or.
This is the groupthink question.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm just reading it just now. Yeah, that in one of our modules, we thread in through communication and decision making, and the different types of behaviors, and groupthink is one of them. You know, what are the pitfalls, and how do you overcome it? So it is a module that we deal with inside two themes.
And I think, you know, when we look at groupthink, one of the ways that we see groupthink happening operationally is that we have senior experienced leaders actually driving and giving the potential answers. And then if Bruce is the most senior person in the room and he's giving what he thinks the way forward is, I will tend to follow him. And then because the risk is shared amongst the larger group, we're more likely to take riskier decisions. So what we train teams to do is we actually train teams, for example, in a well control event, we set up devil's advocate, and we actually get teams to attack the plan and attack what we're trying to do to make sure that it is robust in the right way. So that's an excellent question. Yeah. So it's a real danger in teams that we actually all drift off to poor decision making. So we need to create some tools to do that, and that's just one little tool we use.
And the final one is, what additional resources were provided to reinforce learning, such as manuals, videos, online tools?
Yeah, so we have a wide range of resources. Whether it's it is manuals, it is online. We have online portal. We basically give the teams even tally books that we hand out to the teams so that we can actually share with them, so that they have a quick reference guide as well. So there's a full range of things.
Yeah, we've got what, Grant, in excess of, from a technical side, over 50 training modules. And what we do with the client is we'd sit down and say, right, here's our roadmap, and which of these do we want to roll out? And then we just cherry pick. We pick the ones that are most appropriate for the project, or for the competence that the team already has. For example, we took a rig that went to Mexico. We took it from Singapore, from the shipyard, and that was about close to 100 days. And we rolled out over 50 modules to all the crews that were on there. So the crews actually went with the rig on the tow. So that was from basic drilling practices through to complex well control. So we've got a set of modules that and their things are done in questioning, in videos, and presentations, and in group breakout sessions. We always try and make training as interactive as possible. We don't just want to put 20 slides, PowerPoint slides up on a wall. We try and be as analog as we can.
Brad, the next question, I believe, is about commitment. So how do you define effective leadership?
I think that's a fantastic question. And I think traditionally, what we've seen in leadership is we talk about C2, command and control. So command and control is your traditional do this, do that. We see that as a traditional model, but actually we need to go to E3. So we need to be able to engage, as we've talked about, and we need to be able to encourage, and we need to be able to empower. And really what effective leadership about is releasing the power of the team. And that's why we focus so much on the human factor element, because actually to release the power of the team as leaders, we need to ask more questions and listen more effectively. So if we go back to the aircraft incident, you saw that actually what the leader was doing was sitting back and letting the team share the workload. Just as Bruce and I have done tonight, we've shared the workload of this presentation, and we've actually drawn on all the resources. So if we drew on the resources in Kegworth, the stewardess would have come forward and said, are you aware that you're shutting the wrong engine down? And the co-pilot would have been able to, and that's what they're trained now, the aviation folk. They're trained to actually all engage as a team, irrespective of what level they are. So by drawing on the capacity and the capability of the wider team, that's effective leadership. And that's what we're able to do in these situations with these well groups. Hopefully that answers your question. We've got time for maybe one more. If there's any more, please do.
So far,
if not, we can wind it up.
So far, no more questions. And I guess the one about group thinking was already discussed. So that's all what we have in the system right now on the Q&A button.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Please reach out to Juan, Bruce, or myself, and we'd be delighted to engage with you and just have further discussion on your challenges and, help you achieve success in your projects. So thank you again. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wallace, for this amazing webinar. It's a pleasure for ACIPET and for Colombia here this amazing webinar for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marcos, for hosting us so well this afternoon. Very much appreciated. on behalf of Salos and the team, thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias a todos los asistentes. Thank you so much, everybody, to connect in Zoom and YouTube. And this is the end of the webinar. Thank you so much, Mr. Wallace and Mr. Christie and Mr. Pinson. Bye-bye.
Thank you.